Okay, today is Tuesday, March 8th. It's 3:17 p.m. This is a Prescott City Council voting meeting. Do we have any introductions or announcements, Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, we sure do. Got some very exciting ones. The Prescott Tourism Office will be accepting applications for the Tourism Advisory Committee and Prescott Area Arts and Humanity Council grants beginning now through Friday, April 4th at 5 p.m. There will be a mandatory meeting for grant applications on Friday, March 11 at 3 p.m. via Zoom. These grants are designed to assist nonprofit organizations hosting events in Prescott between July 1, 2022 and June 30, 2023. The goal of the grant is to encourage event marketing outside of the Prescott area, to encourage overnight visitation, and to entertain us, the locals. The grants are funded by the city transient occupancy bed tax. Events are eligible for up to $5,000 depending on their rating and how many organizations successfully apply. The grant is available only to registered nonprofit organizations. For more info, go online to www.visitprescott.com, or you can contact the legendary John Heine at 928-777-1220, or the fabulous Christina Binkley at 928-77-1256. And I have one more announcement. And let's start firewising our property. The City of Prescott is offering a free brush drop off event for residential trash customers. The event will run every Saturday from 8 to 4 throughout the month of April, beginning April 2nd. Here are some tips if you plan to participate. Bring proof of City of Prescott residency. Do not place trash in the brush debris or bag it up. Please remember to cover and contain all loads when transporting. And commercial haulers will be required to pay the standard rate for disposing of brush and vegetation. For more information, call the Outstanding Solid Waste Division at 928-777-1116. Thank you.
Oh, that was great. That was really good. Let's not forget that today is International Women's Day.
Oh,
So,
of course. Yeah.
Congratulations, all you international women. Okay, we'll now have an invocation from Father Raj Brito at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Tenney.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Let us ask the Lord to touch our hearts and to renew our spirit. And we pray for all the women and girls in our community as we celebrate today the International Women's Day, that God may bless them and keep them safe. Let us pray. God of justice and mercy, thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city, Prescott. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and prudence. Give us a spirit of service. Remind us that we are stewards of your authority. Guide us to be the leaders your people need. And God, our merciful Father, give us the strength to work and serve our community to glorify your holy name. We ask this as your sons and daughters, confident in your goodness and love. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you.
Thank you, Father. Please remain standing and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Mayor Good.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Present.
Councilwoman Hall. Present. Councilman Montoya.
Here.
Councilman Sischka.
Here.
Councilman Tenney.
Here.
And the record will reflect that Council Moore is excused from the meeting.
All right, now we'll have proclamations. I have one for Education and Sharing Day. Is Rabbi Ellie Filler here? Please come up. All right, I'm going to read this proclamation, and if I mess up a couple of words, I've done a little bit of practicing, but I'm not sure if it'll come out. Kind of a job. Whereas a quality education is one of significant foundations for continuing success of our state, country, society at large, and the city of Prescott, we strive for the betterment of all citizens through an increased focus on education and sharing. Whereas through providing the possibility of an excellent education for all, especially children, with which to gain knowledge through rigorous study, we can create hope for a brighter, kinder, more united and prosperous future in the lives of so many. And whereas the educational system must also focus on building character by emphasizing this cultivation of universal moral and ethical values that have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization, including the values known as the 7 Noahide laws. And whereas one of the leading global advocates for the advancement of education, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, of righteous memory, stressed the importance of moral and ethical education as the bedrock of humanity and a hallmark of a healthy society, and strongly urged that education be reinforced by the inculcation of strong moral values. And whereas in the recognition of the Rebbe's outstanding and lasting contributions toward improvements in world education, morality, and acts of charity, he was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. And the United States Congress has established his birthday as a national day to raise awareness and strengthen the education of our children. And whereas April 12th, 2020 will mark 120 years since the Rebbe's birth, and the date will be celebrated across the United States and around the globe in tribute to the Rebbe's vision, guidance, and leadership. And whereas for more than 40 years, the President of the United States has recognized and honored the Rebbe's vision each year on that day by proclaiming it Education and Sharing Day USA. And whereas we can nurture the unity of diverse peoples through encouraging increased acts of goodness and kindness, imbued with awareness that even a single positive act of an individual can make a major impact in the world. Now, therefore, I, Phil Good, Mayor of the City of Prescott, do hereby proclaim April 12th, 2022 as Education and Sharing Day USA, and call upon government officials, educators, volunteers, and citizens to reach out to those within your communities and work to create a better, brighter, and more hopeful future for all. Congratulations. Thank you. And here's a copy of our proclamation. Rabbi, would you like to say a few words? Here you go.
Education Day in America began as a realization that education is not just about academics, but it starts with a higher purpose and having a moral purpose every day. I just want to make note that in the legislature, hopefully on the Rebbe's birthday this year, they, God willing, will be passing a moment of silence in all schools, a moment of reflection for children to focus on whatever spiritual resources and purpose they have in their families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Next is People Who Care Week.
Good job, Mayor.
All right to me.
Could I have some representatives from People Who Care up here? Hi.
I'm Steve Zishka.
Hi, Stephen. CJ Melville. Nice to meet you. And
Hi.
It's a pleasure.
Well, this is an extremely vital organization in our community. And so this is a proclamation for People Who Care Week from May 8th to 14th, 2022. Whereas People Who Care, a volunteer nonprofit organization that has been active in service in the Tri-City area for 30 years and now serves multiple times per month over 385 adults who cannot drive. And whereas People Who Care also provides community services in the form of support groups for stroke survivors and those with vision disabilities. And whereas People Who Care also gives technical assistance to housebound individuals who need help setting up or working with their computer or other digital or electronic devices. And whereas People Who Care volunteers provide transportation to and from medical and other necessary appointments. And whereas People Who Care volunteers also provide friendship as well as ongoing services such as paperwork assistance, shopping with or for neighbors, including online shopping, pickup and delivery, and caregiver relief. And whereas other People Who Care volunteers perform minor household repairs or supply or update safety features, providing peace of mind to the residents. And whereas these People Who Care client neighbors are thus able to remain in their own homes longer and more safely than would have otherwise been possible. And whereas People Who Care has continued to function at full capacity to the extent possible through the COVID-19 pandemic and ongoing public restrictions. And whereas People Who Care is locally funded and administered with minimal administrative costs. Now, therefore, Phil Good, Mayor of the City of Prescott, does hereby proclaim May 8th through May 14th, 2022 as People Who Care Week, and applauds the volunteers with People Who Care for their devoted service to those among us who are homebound or disabled, and I urge all citizens to say a warm thank you and celebrate the anniversary of their 30 years of service in the Tri-City area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please say a few words.
we're so grateful to receive this proclamation. People Who Care does everything for our neighbors who are our clients at no charge. So all of these people, including 52% of them who are 80 and older, receive this assistance and the positive relationships that build from these volunteers. These volunteers are amazing human beings, as are all the neighbors that we're blessed to help. Thank you for your support, too.
Very good. Now I think we can move on to the open call to the public.
Yes, we can, Mayor. The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement, and residents may comment and address council on matters that are not included on the agenda during the open call to the public by completing a green public speaker card and submitting it to me prior to the meeting being convened. As a reminder, speakers are limited to 4 minutes, and the call to the public will be limited to 40 minutes in total. Once again, this is an opportunity for the public to speak on matters that are not on the posted agenda, and council may therefore not engage with dialogue on these items. That being said, our first comment card is from Cynthia DeCecco.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. My concern is noise from, where am I going to stand? Okay, maybe over here. Anyway, the noise from the airport. It seems more, I live close to Pioneer Park, within walking distance. And when my husband and I moved here over 20 years ago, our realtor said, "Oh, you don't need to worry about the airport noise. Sam Staggart lives in your neighborhood. Planes will never fly over." Well, things have changed. There's a lot more air traffic. And another bit of history from the neighborhood, the first year we lived there, we painted our house. Down the street was a house where kids were off playing their stereo very loud. I called non-emergency, hey, when do things need to be quiet? And they said, you should never hear your neighbors. So there's not like a 10 o'clock turn your radio down. And so that's what makes this town so livable. I mean, it's just, we're good friends with our neighbors, we respect each other. And whatever you can do to help dampen down the traffic from the airport, the planes flying over our neighborhoods, I think there's a change in the flight paths, and if you could do something, I'd be most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin Smith.
Hi there. I'm here to talk about the same thing. Cindy's my neighbor. So I live at 2945 Garden Lane in Prescott, which is on Willow Creek, just south of Smoke Tree. And like she says, there's been a change. So I've lived there for 6 years, and I started to notice a huge uptick in air traffic. I think it was January, and just major uptick. I used to see maybe 5 planes over my house, and now there's easily 100 every day. Not the weekends, but the weekdays. And so I'm just here to ask that you look into what has changed. I've called Embry-Riddle, the FAA, the city, the airport, and I've gotten 2 responses, one being that nothing has changed, which isn't true, and the second being that there's been a 10% increase in air traffic, but I don't think that's true either, because it's way more than 10%. And so we live 6 miles from the airport, and these planes are going over, I mean, constantly. I timed it one day in February, and it was every 2 minutes there was a plane going over our neighborhood. So I'm just asking for you to find out what's gone on. There's a rumor going around as to what happened, that they've been redirected to not fly over the Deepwell Ranch and other new developments. I don't know if that's true, but it's new to our neighborhood. And like I say, we never, especially they would never flew low. They would be higher when we would see them, but now it's low and it's so loud and it's all day. So if you guys could investigate, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Karen Bennett.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Bennett. My husband and I own a company in the area called Bennett's Vending. For over the last 20 years, we have established this business and built it, worked very, very, very hard at it. 11 years ago, I was contacted by the city requesting that we put machines, a snack machine and a soda machine, at the Prescott City Transfer Station, which we did. Over the last 11 years, we have given excellent service. We would be more than happy. We can provide letters of reference, recommendations. We have several big customers in the area that we're very honored to have. 3 months ago, we started to realize that the machines that we have at the transfer station were being vandalized. They were being kicked. They were being damaged. My husband and our other repair person had to go down there quite frequently over the past 3 months. We put signs up. We realized that there was probably some new employees that had been hired and just weren't respectful of our equipment. One of the things we do is we offer free gift cards to the customers. We put in a $5 gift card, and we put a sign, and then we make a donation to the Humane Society from the money that we raise. In any case, they would write signs on it, and so we realized that we were dealing with some vandalism, and we were hoping it would pass. Last Tuesday, I received a phone call from a Brian Scott. I've never met Mr. Scott, telling me that he wanted me to remove our machines the following day, Friday at the latest. I asked him what seemed to be the problem. He gave me no explanation. He just said, I want your machines out. I explained to him what we had been going through over the last 3 months about the vandalism and the kicking and the damage, and he said he was not aware of any of that. I said, well, simply check with the support staff at the city's transfer station, and I'm sure they could inform you what had been happening. I also asked him that if he was going to replace us, if he would let me know who it was that he was going to replace us with. He told me all snack vending, of which we did a little bit of research, because over the years, because we do have some very, very good accounts, we have had to battle with Pepsi. Pepsi is, last year they did I looked it up, $12 billion, Pepsi. They go after our accounts. And what usually happens is the location will come to us and say, you know, they've confronted us, but we told them, get out. And we really respect that, and we really honor that. In any case, all snack vending doesn't exist. The address is a parking lot across the street from the courthouse. We're fine with moving our equipment. We have plenty of business. We're actually have a foot into retirement. As you can see, we're not young people. However, what our concern is that somebody got a kickback to damage and make us look bad in order to bring Pepsi in. And that's what's upsetting to us. And I think as a city and as a council, you wouldn't want to see that. We're big proponents, and we tell every one of our accounts, thank you for supporting a locally owned business. I mean, that has meant so much to us over the years. And I guess that's all I have to say. It'd be nice if you do move on, if you put it out for bid. And I'd urge you to pick a locally owned small business. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
All right, that concludes our open call to the public. So we will move on to the consent agenda. Is there anyone that wants to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Nope.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval, A through F, consent agenda items.
Second.
Have a motion is second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, we'll move on to item 9, the consent ordinance.
Adoption of ordinance number 2022-1791, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the abandonment of a portion of that certain utility easement located over a portion of Lot 24 and Lot 25, as shown on the final plat for Country Club Park, as recorded in Book 7 of Maps, page 59, records of the Yavapai County, Arizona. Recorder, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said abandonment of easement, and adoption of ordinance number 2022-1794, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the abandonment of right-of-way to the 79th Street LLC, reserving an easement for existing public utilities across the entire area of abandonment, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said abandonment.
All right, does anybody have any questions or want to pull either item for discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to adopt consent ordinances items 9A and 9B.
Second.
Have a motion is second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, that brings us to the regular agenda, and the first item is our legislative update from our Deputy City Manager, Tyler Goodman.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. Happy to be here. Tyler Goodman with the City Manager's Office. We're going to start with the heaviest items, let's say. The first is the Arizona Water Authority, and I sent some information to the Council on this one. This is a strike everything bill. It's an amendment to Senate Bill 1611, and it has actually not been introduced yet. So there's still a lot of information that we don't have, and a lot of discussions that haven't been held yet. So we, like everybody else, I think, throughout the state, is very curious to see how this goes, but this is the information we have so far. It would create a new statewide entity to identify and develop long-term water resources. And they would have the authority to do quite a few things. I think the biggest are to acquire, own, and sell water on behalf of the state, to store water and acquire, hold, assign, and otherwise dispose of storage credits. They could be involved in the construction of water-related facilities, and you can see the list of other things that helps them in those purposes generally. It would create two funds, the Water Supply Development Revolving Fund and the Long-Term Water Augmentation Fund, and they do different functions. They both have different things that they focus on. There would be 9 board members, 6 appointed and 3 unappointed. Of the 6, no more than 1 can be from the same county, and no more than 2 can be residents of Maricopa, Pinal, and Pima counties. And it would create a joint legislative committee within the legislature on water with members including Senate and House leadership and some other ranking members of the minority party as well. And their purpose mainly would be to review proposed expenditures estimated to exceed $100 million. So generally, as you can see, the point is that they would look and to develop and acquire long-term water resources for the state going forward into the future. As I said, we don't have a ton of information. We do have the bill language. This is a summary of it, roughly, but the discussions still haven't been had at the legislature, so there's a lot of things that could happen. And I think, Mayor, I'll pause here to see if there's any comments or questions.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Tyler, I heard a rumor that this authority would override our Prescott AMA area. They would have authority over that too.
Initially, we had concerns of that. And specifically, they do say, so there was frequently asked questions that they included. There was a white paper on this bill. They won't have the ability to condemn water rights or facilities. So they're not, apparently, they're not trying to get involved in local decisions, local water supplies, distribution, and those things. I think that is the main concern for cities, though, especially going into the future. So it's a matter of how is legislation created and how can it be amended in the future is of concern. So that's something that definitely we're keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think the devil's going to be in the details here. Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Tyler, I know I asked you this earlier today, but I just want to ask it again in this session. Have we heard from Barry Aarons, and has he given any guidance about his insight onto this legislation?
Barry hasn't given me any specifics as far as his opinion, except for the information that pretty much everyone has received.
Sure.
Until last week, nobody had information on this bill or the ramifications of it. And so we're all still coming along with the information.
It's moved really fast from my observation. I mean, I read an article by Howard Fisher a couple Sundays ago, and since then it's changed even further since then. Have you had any engagement with NAMWA has a executive director as well, Ron Dobo. Have you had any contact with him, or has Public Works had any contact with him?
I believe Leslie has. In fact, I just saw an email from her with some even more information from NAMWA and from AMWA as well. So it's getting circulated, opinions are coming out, but what I've read so far is basically what I've just stated is we still have a lot to see with this legislation.
And then, Tyler, the last question I'll ask you about this is it your sense that a big driving force behind this is legislative leadership, including the governor at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilman Shishka.
Thank you, Mayor. It sounds like this would be a great reason to circle the wagons up here and get together with our fellow municipalities as well as the county and have some substantial conversations. So at least if they try and come up and purloin some of our water, that we have some apt defenses.
Absolutely. Councilman Tenney.
So you typically bring things to us that are likely to have an impact on municipalities. It sounds like this is broad, and it's still, as Mayor points out, the devil's in the details. Do you know what are there at this point, can you speculate as to likely impacts on municipalities?
Likely impacts, honestly, as far as the information we have on the language that's in the bill, nothing really. So what it is, though, is they are proposing a large appropriation of dollars, even up to $1 billion, to look into securing water supplies from out of the state and maybe swapping, right? So we have more of the Colorado, perhaps. That's going to be an impact statewide on you and me as taxpayers. And how that trickles down and what may come out of that with controlling municipal water supplies, I just don't know yet.
So at this point, it's more of a heads up that this could go any number of directions.
That's right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I like the trickle-down comment. Are there any hearings or anything scheduled for further crafting of this whole authority?
It has to be introduced first, which we have a hard deadline of basically the 25th of this month. After that, there's a lot of other things they have to do to get that across the finish line. But I would expect it to be introduced, to be assigned to committees. They may even try to run a parallel track, I don't know, in both chambers. So far, it's only through the Senate that they're looking at it. But it does need to go through the process.
Interesting.
Okay.
Thank you, Tyler.
You bet. I'll move on quickly through the rest. We've covered all of these in previous sessions, so I won't spend too much time unless you have questions. But 2609 is ambulance services. This did pass out of the House 56-0. We spent quite a bit of time, and Mark helped us understand better 1082, which has to do with ASRS and prepayment on our accounts there, and for that opportunity, which would be very beneficial to us in the long run. Passed out of the Senate 27-0. There are two PSPRS drop bills that we talked about last time. 1268 is I guess less bad in its approach, but it's still bad. It passed out of the Senate 21-6, and 2337 is much more expansive, and that passed out of the House 31-28. However, that one, from what I'm hearing, is much less likely to pass. 1268 is the one we have to worry about. I did have a call with the league on Friday, and they're putting extensive resources and efforts behind this one to stop it and to really explain and clarify what this could do to liabilities going forward. So there's a lot of, I think, momentum and education that will happen in regards to 1268. 1581, this is actually one we have not talked about. It just came up because it's a strike everything bill, which we all love. It has to do with housing rights, homelessness. Basically, the Arizona Department of Housing would distribute grants to cities and counties in order for them to establish camping sites, sanctioned and designated camping sites for those experiencing homelessness. Cities and counties would be required to enforce then ordinances against sleeping and camping in public. The concern really is the Ninth Circuit decision that there's a lot of nuances with enforcing such ordinances. You have to provide places. There's not a lot of case law in that realm. And so we're concerned that if cities were to take the funding and then unconstitutionally enforce ordinances to keep that funding, then that would be a problem. Of course, you don't have to take the funding yet. I think there's also concerns back to the idea of bills can be easily amended in future years, that something like this could be amended to say, okay, cities, you have to take this money, you have to establish these camping sites, and you have to enforce non-camping ordinances. So that's really the concern, is future impacts of something like this.
So when was this Ninth Circuit decision?
Matt, you remember the year that?
2019, and the Supreme Court declined to hear the appeal. So what'll probably happen, there are 13 circuit courts in the United States, and once there's sort of a split on interpretation, this particular case, Martin versus Boise, came out of the city of Boise in Idaho, held that it was a cruel and unusual punishment to not provide or to hold homeless people accountable for criminal camping, where they had shut down a facility for them to sleep. So where there were no beds available, the Ninth Circuit said it is cruel and unusual to hold people criminally responsible for being homeless. And at some point, there probably will be a split in the circuits where another circuit says, well, that is not cruel and unusual. And that may rise it up to the U.S. Supreme Court to make a final determination on this. But right now, it's the law of the land in Arizona and the rest of the Ninth Circuit states. So it's just something we have to be aware of and deal with.
Stay tuned.
Yep. House Bill 2674, this has to do with establishing the study committee to look at affordable housing throughout the state. This was amended from the really bad version we talked about last month. Passed the House 46-12. 1634 is the League of Cities version of affordable housing. It hasn't progressed yet, and it may not in consideration of the bill we just talked about to see a study committee. Senate Bill 1198, this actually just failed yesterday afternoon in the Senate, I think 12 to 17, if I remember right. So that one is no longer a concern for us as of this moment. Vacation rentals, again, there's 5 of them that we're tracking. Most are awaiting rules within their respective chambers, but 1168 did pass out of the Senate 22 to 6. And 2276, this would expand the Senate Bill 1487 from a number of years ago. It would be a problem for us in that it would include written policies, rules, and regulations that we could potentially be in violation of and receive a complaint, which could potentially withhold state shared revenues. So that's a concern on that one.
Yeah, I thought this House Bill 2711, requiring a city with less than 17,000 people to require licensing for vacation rentals. I thought that was an interesting number that came up with. But apparently 58% of all the 91 cities and towns in the state have less than 17,000 people in it. And some of those are being severely impacted by vacation rentals taking away available housing stock. So I think that one kind of needs to be watched.
Absolutely. And then the Guns in Public Buildings bill passed out of the House 3128, and it passed out of its Senate committee 5 to 3. So it's waiting for action there, more in the Senate. And finally, the fireworks bills. There's one in the Senate, one in the House. Both have progressed through their chambers and into the next and past the committee in the opposite chamber. So those are progressing. That would help us regulate what fireworks, when they go off or not in the city. So that's a good one for us. And with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Boy, what a legislative session we have. It seems like every year they get more interesting, should I say?
Creative, I like to say.
Amazing. Thank you, Tyler.
Welcome.
Any other questions? No. Okay, we'll move on to item B on the regular agenda, 10B.
Adoption of resolution number 2022-1810, adopting a city council policy for the planning and development of the Granite Creek area.
Good afternoon again, Mayor and Council.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself. Thank you.
Okay.
I wanted to help set the table here for this item. The Granite Creek Area Plan was brought to Council initially at the end of 2020, and Council approved it, and we began planning shortly thereafter in the beginning of 2021. Please remember that this is different from the Granite Creek corridor, trail improvements, access points, lighting. That is a separate project that is happening on a parallel track. This plan includes results from many discussions that we've had with a steering committee, working group, business and landowners, civic groups, a public survey. We've had a lot of input. In fact, we've been to the the Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Traffic Advisory Committee who reviewed this. It received a recommendation to move forward from the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we're bringing this to you in the form of a resolution because this would create it as a policy so that staff can use it when reviewing development within the area that this plan outlines. It'll also allow us to move forward with some of the elements such as connecting, incentivizing, and wayfinding. And those would be approved separately as they come forward to council in future months and future years. So with that, I'd like to invite Leslie Dornfeld, our lead consultant from Planet. She's been helping us as the lead on this and has done a great job for us, and I will hand it over to her.
He's tall. Hi, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you again so much. We're really pleased here to present to you once again the Granite Creek Area Plan. I think this is the third time you've seen it. The first time was a very preliminary briefing. The second time was a little more detail. And now we're just going to quickly review the plan and then really respond to any questions that you might have. Just as a quick reminder, the plan is a digital online document. We did that for a couple of reasons. One, it makes it more accessible to everyone. It allows more detail on the plan. People can click on parcels and learn a lot about it. And it also makes it much more updatable for your community and your staff. I'm just going to go straight to the executive summary. The plan has a variety, actually, I'm sorry about that. Just go back here for 1 second. The plan has a variety of pieces. It's really in 6 parts. The first part is just how do you use the online document. The second part is acknowledgements and an executive summary. The third part is an introduction that talks about the plans and some of the big ideas that shape it. And then the last 5 sections are really the meat of the plan. The plan is based on 5 big ideas. The first big idea is to next gen the corridor. The second big idea is to deal with connections, pedestrian connections, vehicular connections, parking, mobility. The third big idea is looking at how we can incentivize redevelopment and new development within that corridor to continue to bring people in and also benefit the economy of the Prescott area and the downtown. The 5th big idea is design. What would this corridor look like, and what are some of the opportunities that exist for new development and substantial renovations? And then the 5th big idea is wayfinding, help people navigate through the corridor. So I'll go through those big ideas using the executive summary, and we'll be happy to respond to any questions. Just so that you know, within each of these big ideas, there's a variety of strategies and goals and actions. All of them are organized to short, mid, and long term. This plan really doesn't put a budget or ask for any money from the city. We believe that most of this plan will be implemented through development with the support of the city in some public areas. So I'm going to skip through the acknowledgements. You've all seen those, and just go straight to the executive summary. The purpose of this plan, as Tyler mentioned, is to really leverage the incredible investment that you're making in the physical Granite Creek. I think there are over 60,000 people a year that go through Granite Creek. It's a remarkable opportunity for the downtown. It's also a way of really connecting the downtown to Granite Creek in a very unique way, and in a way that I don't know exists in Arizona. Just also, the plan was really started as a result of the business owners in Granite Creek approaching the city and the city determining that it would be appropriate to do a plan. This talks about the plan area. The planning area is really north. It's around Pioneer Park, and then the southern end of the plan is Aubrey. The western side of the plan is McCormick Street, and the eastern side of the plan is generally Montezuma. The one thing I want to point out is the plan does not include that frontage in front of Whiskey Row across from the Courthouse Plaza. We include the alley, but not the block on the west side of the alley. This is one of the changes that we've made since we spoke with you last. The plan includes some important historic districts, and those districts override the plan. So new development within those districts would have to be examined by the Historic Preservation Commission, and the historic design guidelines that are appropriate to that district would be applied, not the guidelines of this plan, unless the Historic Preservation Commission wants to do it, but it's really their guidelines. Guidelines do exist for the historic districts that do cross the plan area. This is North Prescott. I believe you'll be developing guidelines for that area as well. Right here in the corners, you can see Courthouse Plaza, and then there's the South Prescott District, which takes the frontage of Montezuma Street south of Sheldon. The plan would be implemented as a policy plan, and Tyler just spoke to that. So this would really be through staff implementing the policies in this plan should it be adopted by the council. Tyler talked about the planning process. It was extensive, so there's a lot of ideas in it. And then, as I'd mentioned, there are 5 big ideas that guide the plan. The first big idea, Next Gen, really talks about creating 3 districts within the corridor: a work, a play, and a live precinct. These precincts generally reflect the uses that are there now. For example, the work precinct includes the hotel, it includes the new city hall, it includes places like Founding Fathers. The play precinct is really the entertainment district of the corridor, and then the live precinct is where we're promoting more residential development. And you just looked at the legislative thing. Housing really is in demand in this community. We think it's an opportunity to bring the people that live within the corridor now to look a little bit more like the rest of the city. Right now, they're typically much older than the rest of Prescott's residents, and they're typically a lot more renters. The connections really talks about connecting Granite Creek Corridor to the creek. And the big idea here is to really activate the alley, the Whiskey Row Alley, by extending it north and south and connecting it to Granite Creek. So in addition, we're looking at what we're calling these little mid-block connections, which could either be viewpoints or crosses of the creek or areas where you can just sit and enjoy the creek. And those occur through the development and design section. But by making the creek more accessible to people in the area and making the area more accessible to people in the creek, we believe that we can support and incentivize development. So there's a whole bunch of strategies you can see listed here that have a variety of actions in them, and that's in the Connect section to encourage connecting the creek to the Granite Creek area. Incentivize, the big ideas in incentivize would be really to look at an enhanced services district. Those are used by most of the successful downtowns within the state. Similar to a business improvement district, we just don't have the legislation to allow a standard one here, or kind of tax incentive districts, excuse me. Really looking at advertising the area, promoting capital and entrepreneurship, looking at the types of businesses and maybe working with your economic development department to reach out to those kinds of businesses and get them to look at Granite Creek area. Promoting public-private partnerships, and then maybe looking at a redevelopment area, and then also reducing development costs through fee waivers and just simple fees that the city might charge. The big idea here is design. You'll notice that some of this imagery has changed. We've changed it with a lot of help and really great support from the city's planning department. They were really helpful in this. But just to really look at how do we create design that really opens the creek up to development, maybe double fronts development and activates the creek. So for example, if this were Granite Creek, you could imagine this kind of development next to it. And you can see that there's a variety of design strategies and design principles that are detailed in the design section of the plan. We talk about what design should look adjacent to the creek, as well as for some of those east-west crossings to the creek. And we also talk about design for each of the precincts that promote a variety of uses. So for example, this could occur adjacent to Granite Creek, which could be here. There's actually enough right-of-way to make that happen. In the play precinct, doing the same thing, really thinking of areas that people might want to dine or, have coffee adjacent to the creek, meet someone in the morning for a cup of coffee. And then the live precinct, how do we really face buildings onto the creek and also activate the alley? So using double-fronted development that really takes advantage of both of those access areas. There's also some wayfinding recommendations in the plan, and this also went through the public process. We included a sign placement plan that talks about the different types of signs. You can see they're identified by color and the different places that they could be put within the district. And this will help make the district unique through signing, but it'll also help people understand, for example, if they're in the creek, hey, there's a coffee shop on this block, maybe I'll get out. Or someone that's sitting in the coffee shop, understanding that they can access the creek nearby. So that is a very quick overview of the plan, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Leslie, I had the opportunity to sit down with you and Tyler before I came into office, which was very useful. I've seen you guys present at Planning and Zoning. Well, or I think I saw you present, at Planning and Zoning and Historic Preservation. I'm sure I'm missing.
Full water torture.
You've gone through a lot of process, and I guess my question, broadly speaking, to you is, how has the feedback you have gotten from members of council or the various boards and commissions that you've gone before shaped the plan that we're looking at today?
That's a great question. We got feedback, I would say, in probably 3 main areas. One was in the connectivity section, just people wondering about speeds and safety and mid-block crossings. We've talked a lot about that in the connection section. A lot of the, for example, roadway recommendations are NACTO, or their kind of best practices recommendations. So we've looked at a lot of that. There's been a fair amount of support for that. I think there's general agreement on the walkability and the alley component of it. We got a lot of just some questions about how is this plan going to get implemented and what's the role of the city. And I think the role of the city here is to guide development, but also for economic development to work with the property owners and the organizations that promote the downtown and the Granite Creek area to encourage development and redevelopment in that area. So we beefed up that a little bit, and we also talked very specifically about the kinds of businesses that would really be appropriate to that area, which are things that take advantage of the creek. So it might be outdoors-based businesses, things like that. The last big area we got comments on is the design section. We got a lot of feedback on design, robust feedback. And as a result of that, we made a lot of changes. In particular, it was the imagery. People felt the imagery just wasn't right for the historic character of the downtown. So we updated, just want to, that's design, there we go. I'm just clicking to these because I'm hoping they've loaded. But for example, in the play precinct, we've updated the building topologies and what they look like. We've changed some of these reference images to show how you could apply these numbers, each apply to one of the design principles, how you could apply these design principles in a development that would blend in more with what Prescott envisions and the building typologies and the materials that Prescott envisions for itself.
Another question I have for you is, some of the feedback that I've gotten is people think about this, I don't know how familiar you are with, say, like Durango, Colorado, where there's the Animus and there's a walkway, or even Austin, I know has a pretty developed, Austin, I think, has a pretty developed kind of river kind of that goes through. And I've tried to kind of say to people, based on my conversation with you and Tyler and having observed some of the meetings, that that's not quite what we're talking about here, right? It's not going to be...
Not at that scale,
Not at that
certainly.
scale. So I think that's probably just a little bit of an education piece because I think some people in the community still have that sense for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, the sites can't handle that scale, so you're just not going to build at that capacity. But, I think that the idea of promoting redevelopment and promoting a place that is unique and attractive to the community and to visitors is something that we're taking both from Austin, from places like Durango, Great Falls, Montana, a lot of those ideas. And it's not a tomorrow process. It's a very long-term process, which is one of the reasons we're suggesting this plan be adopted as policy.
And I think that's a good thing to get out into the public too, that this isn't like, we're not going to radically change things overnight. And that's another kind of piece of it. If I'm understanding correctly, kind of what you're seeking today is, though, you're looking for our stamp of approval as this is kind of the game plan that we're going to provide to property owners in this part of the community to say, this is kind of what we're looking to see in the future, and we're going to partner with you to make that happen where appropriate. Am I kind of summarizing that correctly?
Right. It's a plan to make sure what happens is what you want to happen and to guide the future. That's really what planning is all about.
Councilman Shishko.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'm a huge fan of the concept of the Whiskey Row Alley. And I noticed that you're trying to take the Whiskey Row Alley and extend it north and south. What are the biggest impediments do you feel are in the way of making those alleys a gathering place?
That's a great question. I think one of the impediments is design. You have a lot of buildings that don't open to the alley. They're closed to the alley. But in our plan, what we recommend through activation is a way to jump over that. We recommend a lot of, trying to just see where we can do this, activate the alley. We recommend activating the alley, and there's a bunch of ways that you can do this. You can do it by putting interim just movable furniture in the alley and planning events in the alley, having farmers markets or music festivals or fairs in the alley, and that activates the alley. You can do more permanent things, and you've done some of that, for example, with murals or semi-permanent street furniture. Here's an example, for example, of some semi-permanent street furniture. Here's an example of a restaurant that doesn't really have access directly to the alley, but uses the alley for dining. So activating the alley is something that could be done in partnership with the city on behalf of the merchants, and it doesn't close it down to deliveries and to trash collection. There's ways of even making trash canisters attractive. We have painted, one of the things we're recommending is, maybe painting the trash canisters. Have a citywide contest to do it, attract artists from all over the state, So there's a variety of ways that you can activate that alley. So that's one of the first things. The second thing is the crossing of the street. So those alleys end at major streets. So one of the other things the plan does talk about is mid-block connections and how those could work. You've already got some crossing Montezuma at the Courthouse Plaza. Maybe just thinking about that philosophy for the alley as well when it crosses the streets and maybe slowing down some traffic. I think those are probably the two biggest challenges for doing it. That's probably, I would say, in terms of low-hanging fruit for this plan, some of the lowest hanging fruit is activating the alley.
Well, in your experience, is there any communities that are doing what I would like to call an alley festival? Where they take, a festival and just have it in the alleys?
We've got a bunch of examples of those in the plan. And so partly it's age, and partly it's just because I'm not a good memorizer. But there's all of these examples all across. There's San Francisco that does it. I'm not recommending you become San Francisco, but it's take the tools and use them for your own end. I think the city of Phoenix does it. Roosevelt Road does it. Flagstaff may do it, I'm not sure. But it's just a question of staging any event that you might stage on the street, extend it to that alley. It's a question of allowing activities to occur in the alley that people may not think about having now, seating. Allow dining in the alley, allow restaurants to run around the block or use their back doors and serve customers from their kitchen or from their delivery areas. Invite, I think it might have been Louisiana, they have a music alley where they have a local school on once a month. Their band plays in the alley and they have a music festival. So maybe you have a music night. Many jurisdictions do arts festivals in the alley. I can envision, I've been up here for a lot of arts festivals around the plaza. It's pretty crowded. Now you've got some more real estate to rent. Think about the alley. So, those are tremendous options that'll just change the corridor, and it'll pull people into the corridor, and it'll also expose them to Granite Creek.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, I can see generally adopting the plan will at least create some direction for the council to adopt as development goes forward within the plan. We do have some practical restrictions on the narrowness of the alley. We have the concerns about delivery and trash collection because it's so narrow. Sometimes we have problems with deliveries occurring in the center lane of Montezuma during active periods of the day, and whether that pushes more deliveries into the street or pushes more back into the alley. All those are kind of management concerns. But I think the general concept is, Councilman Shishka, I agree, is probably something worthy of adopting and then using that as a long-term kind of direction and goal. It also allows the council, when we're debating approving development permits, to be able to say, well, we prefer this development over that development because it's more in line with the Granite Creek corridor development. And that way we're not discriminating against any particular private development of property that's within the kind of corridor itself. I think in the long run, it'll probably be beneficial, but I agree with you, Councilman Montoya. We don't want to send a signal to the community at large that we're making dramatic redevelopment decisions here. So I think there were some concerns like that voiced both at historic preservation and planning and zoning. So I think being able to adopt this, but also communicate it in such a way to the community at large that these are just kind of long-term planning decisions that will guide us as proposals come forward within these areas, whether it's the work, live, or entertainment sections of it. So with that said, do we have any public comment?
We do not, Mayor.
Any other concerns from the council? Okay, I think at this point I'll entertain a motion. Go ahead.
Mayor, I would move to adopt resolution 2022-1810.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, please vote.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie.
All right, moving to item 10C.
Approval of the submission of 3 applications for grant funding provided by the Arizona Governor's Office of Highway Safety for the Prescott Police Department in the amount of $254,751 for fiscal year 2023.
Mayor, should we let Mayor Pro Tem Rusi know she should come back in?
I suppose so. And I guess Chief Bonnie doesn't agree with Deputy Chief Brambola that spring has actually arrived.
No, I still have the illicit heater under my desk. Shall I wait for Mayor Pro Tem? Okay. Like a joke or something in the meantime?
How's it going? You guys keeping everyone safe?
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
It's going good.
Yeah. There's always enough business. We're thankful for that.
I mean, a little earlier in the meeting, you could have said there's a rabbi and a priest, and
They all walked into a council meeting.
they're gone.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. Amy Bonney, Police Chief, and I have with me our subject matter expert, Sergeant Nathan Bartow of our Traffic Safety section. So just a little bit before I turn the floor over to Sergeant Bartow about this, this is our request for approval to submit for 3 separate grants through the Governor's Office of Highway Safety for $254,751. And just a little bit of background, we've been applying for these grants for several years now, have been very successful due to the diligence of our traffic safety team in getting these grants. And we use these grants in this particular case for 3 separate things. 1 is DUI enforcement, 2 is speed and aggressive driving enforcement, and 3 is accident investigation. So I'll let Sergeant Bartow tell you a little bit about what we plan to use the money for if we are allowed to accept these grants.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Again, as our chief said, we are applying for 3 separate grants. The first one I'd like to talk about is our DUI enforcement grant. We are looking at right around $37,500 from the governor's office. $35,000 will be used for officer overtime, strictly for enforcement action. And then we also do educational events. To provide you an example of an educational event, we just did it at the Chicago concert where several officers from multi-agencies walked around with portable breath tests, asking people if they felt that they were impaired and if they would drive. They then voluntarily provided a breath sample, and some of those people opened their eyes they didn't know that they were that intoxicated. The second $2,500 will be used to purchase 5 of these portable breath tests, which will be immediately placed into service within the patrol division. Our goal is to have a portable breath instrument in each patrol vehicle. Our second grant that we are looking at is the Selective Traffic Enforcement program. This is used for speed and aggressive driving. We use this money for officer overtime. We also do educational events. We will do mock crashes. I know that we have done them for a leadership course, I think that the city put on a couple years ago. We have also used it at the high school to do these mock events. As far as an enforcement action, we get with the local agencies, Prescott Valley PD, Chino Valley, the county, and DPS, and we go around all jurisdictions and do traffic enforcement. In fact, we have one tomorrow morning in Chino Valley. So if you're on Highway 89, we will be out there 5 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Travel after 9 a.m.
Then the last grant is the accident investigation grant. We are looking at purchasing a Bosch brand crash data recorder, a Leica laser scanner, and to put 2 officers through a class so they will be able to use the crash data equipment. Now, the crash data recorder allows us to obtain information through the black box in a vehicle. This has become great information that we've had to farm out to other agencies because we don't have the ability to do so. Last year, we had a wrong-way driver on Highway 89A that was suspended for DUI, and he ultimately went the wrong way down Highway 89 and killed a Embry-Riddle flight instructor. We were able to use the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office to obtain that information, and we were able to provide that information to the Yavapai County Attorney's Office. The Leica is to be used for crashes. It reduces our time where streets will be closed. Each scan is approximately 2 minutes, and the average crash is serious crash or fatality is maybe 10 to 15 scans. So we would be able to hopefully open up a public roadway within an hour with the use of this. And lastly, the 2 officers, since we do not have the crash data recorder, we do not have any officers that know how to use that, so we would have to send them to school. And I think that is it. Here's a picture of the crash data recorder. Each manufacturer has their own setup. So each one of these would represent a different manufacturer, and within that, maybe one is for sedans and one is for pickups, and so on. And then here is a picture of the Leica. Thank you.
So if you were successful, Sergeant, on this particular one, the grant would pay the full cost of acquiring it, training it,
Yes, sir.
training the officers?
Yes, sir. If we are approved to receive the equipment, Leica will send an instructor to Prescott to train officers.
Well, first of all, I want to applaud your diligent efforts in the recent past. I think the ongoing diligent traffic enforcement has really made an impact on the community at large. I think we're starting to see a reduction in aggressive driving. I've, of course, talked to the chief about how important it is to have visible, consistent enforcement, and having people. I even had, I think I mentioned this to the chief, one of my American Legion comrades was saying, "Phil, you're scaring the hell out of us." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "We're afraid to speed down there on Willow Creek Road." I said, "Well, you just made my day," because that's what we want to see. And we want to see the other people that have felt that they can just drive aggressively with impunity, start to realize that they're at risk of not only hurting someone substantially, but being able to be ticketed and have a much safer transit down our major arteries. So thank you for that. Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions, and one of these is just kind of out of curiosity. So the scanner does something different than the black box hookup. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, sir. Those were two different pieces of equipment.
So how exactly does it, again, I apologize for my not understanding this, but what does the scanner do?
And maybe I can go back to it. This is used to withdraw the information from the black box in a vehicle.
Right.
We are able to use that. It will provide us at what point the person applied brakes prior to the crash, how fast they were going before they applied brakes, and how fast the vehicle was going at impact.
Got it.
Where this one is, this is on a tripod, and it takes 3D scans of like serious injury collisions or fatality collisions, where we can make a 3D model, which we can use in court.
I see. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry I just want to make sure I understood. I knew there were two distinct pieces of equipment. I just wanted to know what each of them do. And then the last question I have for you is, so today you're seeking basically to apply for those grants. So you're wanting our request to approve that.
Yes,
apply.
sir.
And do you have a sense of that you'll get approved for these grants? Is it more or less, or do we not know until the grant cycle is closed?
The actual grant runs from October 1st through September 30th. Generally, we will not hear until August. With these, as far as the DUI and STEP grant, we have been receiving those. I think I saw back to 2004. And the accident investigation grant just opened. This is the first time we've applied for it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Tenney.
Thanks for the great presentation, for all your efforts in preparing the information for us and for yourselves to be able to be successful as applicants for the grant. I come from a world where we do a lot of that, and I know how much effort's involved, so thank you for that. Real quick question. If someone, this sounds great to me. I mean, I'm like, what? I'm going to press yes already. If someone were looking at this through a real cynical lens, is there any reason why a person would not press yes already? Or that is to say, are there strings attached here? Are there matching funds that you would have to put up, et cetera? These seem like no-brainers to me. Am I missing something?
No, sir. We do have to put out press releases. We're going to put out a press release for the St. Patrick's Day task force. I'll put it out in the next couple days.
Sure.
And we generally do a recap for like tomorrow morning in Chino Valley. We will do a recap for the whole task force.
Right.
Chino would be in charge of that tomorrow.
Sure.
So we do have to do those and mention Governor's Office of Highway Safety in those.
Great. So minor strings, things you might want to do anyway.
Yes, sir.
This is terrific. Thank you again so much for your efforts.
Yeah, I know when you had that joint task force targeted aggressive driving period, and then you produce the number of really egregious violators, I heard it being discussed by a number of people afterwards. So I think that, again, reinforces how important traffic enforcement is. Having these additional tools will make it even more effective, and hopefully we can slow things down and make things a lot safer for our residents. Any other comments or concerns or questions? Thank you, Sergeant, very much for your presentation. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Deputy Springtime Chief back there. I appreciate it. If there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion here.
Mayor, I move to approve submission of 3 applications for grant funding provided by the Arizona Governor's Office of Highway Safety for the Prescott Police Department.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Very good.
Adoption of resolution number 2022-1811, updating the city's pension funding policy.
Thank you, Sarah. Mayor and Council, get to talk to you about some of my favorite stuff, PSPRS and pension funding. A few years ago, several years ago, back when the PSPRS was such an issue across the state, still an issue across the state, and a lot of us were trying to point out to the legislature how they brought a lot of this on in the 90s when they were increasing benefits constantly to PSPRS without considering the funding aspect of it. The legislature decided that they would require us to do a funding policy so that we would acknowledge as individual people what our liabilities were and what our funding goals were. So they passed this, and we have been having to do it since 2017. Makes, just looking back at the legislative update, makes you a little upset that they're starting to look at increasing pension benefits again with changes to the drop and stuff. I guess they never got the point. But anyway, so this is part of our annual budget process. Every year we have to acknowledge the amount of our liability, which of course is here in the policy as part of the actuarials that we get. They also require the council to establish a funding goal, which council did several years ago. As to have an actual policy, though, we've added how are we going to get to that goal. So we've established the funding goal. We've established what council has done, such as the additional payments council has directed from general fund balance, the additional payments from the operating funds for the annual ARC, the working with the legislature to secure the funding for the hotshot line of duty deaths, and also the council's working with the voters to get the Prop 443 passed. So essentially, this is the annual update. I've taken this opportunity to also update some of the wording for the fact that 443 will probably be complete this year. As we get closer, we'll know for sure as we get closer to the June deadline. So again, just the annual update of this policy as required by state law. There's a lot in the policy that isn't required, but it's necessary to have a complete policy to talk about what we're doing to get where we're supposed to be. With that, I'd be glad to go into any more detail or tell you what I think about the state legislatures messing with the pension.
Any questions or comments? No, I applaud your regular updates for us. Pension funding, whether it's a PSPRS or ASRS, is also something I watch very, very closely. And I think it's terrific that we're getting very close to being able to retire that 0.75 tax for the city residents. And then we'll have to monitor how our liability continues to be managed and doesn't start growing again afterwards. But as long as we make sure that we keep a priority in keeping that funding well managed and not grow, then we should be in good shape in the long term. All right, seeing no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 2022-1811.
Second.
Motion is second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
See, look how persuasive you were, Mark. Thank you.
Approval of multiple items related to signalization and traffic systems in the city as follows. Number 1, approval of city contract number 2022-160 for the purchase of 17 traffic signal controllers and malfunction equipment units from Macondo Light Control Products, Inc. And number 2, approval of city contract number 2022-161 for the purchase of 34 ubiquity radio traffic signal communication systems from AM Signal LLC.
Yep. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ian Mattingly, City Traffic Engineer. So, as was just stated, this is approval of 2 items that are related to signalization and communication systems on Willow Creek Road, Miller Valley Road, and Grove Avenue, primarily that corridor. But basically, it's a combination of 2 purchases. The first one is 17 new controller units for the traffic signals and malfunction management units, MMUs. These are required to upgrade our existing controllers that are out there on Willow Creek Road, Miller Valley Road, and Grove as part of the upgrades that we've been ongoing to implement some traffic signal timing improvement plans. The second purchase is for the Ubiquity radio systems. We've already got 7 of those installed. This is for, I think it's 34 systems, but it's enough to complete the rest of the 20 plus intersections, and then have some spares, and then use those for linking back to our facility where we will control those systems. The equipment is needed to implement, I think I've talked about this before, but CYMPO through a project did an evaluation of Willow Creek Road corridor, and we inventoried all our hardware and all the upgrades that we need to do in order to implement some timing plans that were developed as part of that project. So we've got new coordinated signal timing programs that will be implemented once we complete all these upgrades. You've previously approved some radio purchases and detection for the entire corridor. This completes the purchases that we need to upgrade the whole system. The purchases are priced, and we're purchasing on pricing from the Maricopa Department of Transportation Traffic Signal Equipment Contract. And the implementation of the equipment will complement all the upgrades that I already stated, and which are ongoing. Once we get this equipment in, which there is some lead time on traffic signal controllers and things like that, we will implement those, and we hope that will be happening in the summertime. Once we do that, we expect to have better peak hour traffic flow, so reduced delays overall. There were some questions from council regarding, what's the purpose of all this and what's this going to do for us? It's going to improve traffic flow, hopefully lowering frustration, maybe helping with some of these speeding issues and things that are going on. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Shishka.
Thank you, Mayor. Ian, is this going to also alleviate the situation where in off hours, you're sitting on a side street, let's say off of Willow Creek Road, and the light is just red and red and red, so you can't get on to...
So once we yeah, it sounds like somebody wants the answer to be yes. When we upgrade these controllers, we're going to have the ability to run these time-of-day programs. And so during peak hour, it's going to do all these fancy things. But in the off hours, yes, they're going to be coordinated better. They're going to keep time with each other. And so when we get outside of peak hours, we would have a flexibility to basically run them free, which would allow them to change much quicker. If we felt, as a community that we want to do that at night, we could do that, where we can just have quicker cycling of the side street at night when there's very low traffic or the weekends. So yes, we could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know, Ian, I think it was a year or two ago when we first acquired the imaging detection technology for that short segment of Willow Creek Road. But we also needed to have this additional equipment to be able to connect with the signal lights and then be able to move it all the way down to the end of Grove. So we have our primary I think major arterial now is going to be able to be fully implemented. And I think with the recent or the information that we got from the police department on their traffic enforcement, this should be able to not only have the traffic enforcement of violators, but this should create some more confidence in drivers that if they obey the speed limits, they'll be able to make a full transit of that primary corridor with a certain amount of confidence that they don't have to feel like they have to speed up to try to make a light or something like that. So I think this is what we were hoping to achieve, and now that we've got all the components together, we should be able to achieve that traffic flow improvement.
Mm-hmm. Mayor, could I ask another question?
Sure.
Ian, I've always had this fear of, okay, so if, like the mayor's talking, you're going through, you go through a green light and you maintain the speed limit and you pretty much hit green lights all the way down. What if you are in the red light cycle. So you're a red light. Are you going to hit every red light going down the street?
So, the improvements, they make overall improvements to the system, and the overall delay, basically the new signal plans analyze what we have existing, what's going to be in place with this coordinated system. So there is reduction in delay overall at each intersection, and platooning and those kind of moving large amounts of cars going through will be better. But it's not perfect. It never is. And, a good example is that 69 has coordination on it. And there's, you can lose on that thing too. So sometimes when you are not in the right one, or you're on a side street during AM or PM, sometimes it feels worse. So it's not a magic solution for everything. But overall, right now, we've got some areas where they're just they're just running free. And they're kind of spaced out there where they just hit the whole traffic flow in the morning and everybody stops and you hit the next one. That's the frustration you get. At least if you know that it's moving and you can get into it, or you're not in it, and then maybe you will, it's less frustrating. When it feels like the city doesn't have a coordinated pattern and it's just random, I think that's when it leads to a lot more frustration. So the short answer is there still can be frustration and you can get out of it, but overall it should be better for progression, reduced delay, all those things.
Awesome. How about Black Drive?
Yeah, Black Drive is part of this, and actually Black Drive is a special condition because it's linked to Gail Gardner. At this point, it's still staying that way, and it requires some special detection that you're actually going to see us come back with probably in about a month.
That's good. I know. There's nothing worse than just getting stopped there, and there's no cars going either way.
What about
right?
Pulliam?
Yeah.
Because that's right by my business, and so when I wait there forever.
I can just take a list of all these locations.
I'm kidding.
We'll still have red lights and everything.
Right. Well, I think this is what we were hoping for, Mayor Pro Tem Rusing, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just have one question. So going forward, what do you think the ideal speed is going to be so that you hit all the green lights?
Well, right now,
the posted one.
We don't plan on reducing it to 25, like some of the streets that we've seen other places. And we have there's 2 speeds on this corridor. Actually, I think we have 3 speeds on Willow Creek all the way down. Might have 4. We go from 30 to 35 to 40 to 45. We step up as we go.
Mm-hmm.
So the consultant who specializes in this sort of modeling and the traffic timing on this did use our existing speeds.
Okay.
So
just
it's
drive the
optimized
speed
for that
limit?
sort of thing, but it sets one cycle time. I think it's 100-second cycle time for a complete, movement through. But the speed limits weren't proposed to be removed or changed. But maybe this will probably get more platooning where it'll be harder for you to zoom through and do those 70-mile-an-hour things.
Oh, darn.
Except during off time. I mean, this is peak hour.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further comment? In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2022-160.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, please vote.
Passes 5-0.
5-0.
You got to make there's 3 there, Ken.
Out.
Did I do something?
There's one more.
Oh, yes. And move to approve city contract number 2022-161.
Second.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Getting better.
All right, we'll move on to item 10F.
Approval of city contract number 2022-158 with Danson Construction LLC for solid waste maintenance building project.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Craig Dotseth, Public Works Director, one last time. This item, exactly as Sarah mentioned, is consideration of the solid waste maintenance building. So this building would supplement and or help out our solid waste equipment mechanic who inspects, maintains, and repairs the many pieces of equipment that we have for the solid waste division. This is not by any means to replace our fleet maintenance facility. This is supplement that. So some of the items that our mechanic works on would be to change tires, hoses, the grippers on the trucks, fluids, wipers, and they're planning on, they would like to start doing more tailgate seal maintenance there as well. So then he'd be able to do that on like Fridays, let the glues and such set up over the weekend, be ready to go on Monday. So that would be a new item. But currently, he works out there in the dirt, on the ground, on a concrete slab. There is no means of getting out of the weather for that while he's working on these trucks. So this is a simple steel building that will have some heat in it, ventilation, and then be able to close up and get out of the elements somewhat. We did put this out to bid and received 2 bids. However, one of them came back unsealed. And by state procurement rules, as well as our city code, if that sealed bid, as it is described, comes in unsealed or opened, something like that, we cannot look at it, cannot open it or consider it. So we did have that situation with one bid. This is not something that happens on any regular fashion. In the last 10 years, I can think of maybe 3 times that we've had an issue of some type with a bid that's been submitted. But we did have to follow state as well as our own rules associated with that. In regards to only having then the one viable bid, I guess one bright side is a local contractor right here in Prescott that does have that bid. So with that, we are recommending to accept the bid in the amount of the $270,383 with Danson Construction. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Yeah, I just have one. How many square feet is this building?
You'll ask me something that I do not have on the tip of my tongue.
That's okay.
It is large enough to hold 2 of our solid waste trucks. So it'd just be two bays with room on each side and in between them.
Okay, thank you. It looks like a very worthy project.
Did you have an engineer's estimate of the cost prior to the bid?
We did. This is over that a little bit. It was about 30,000 over our estimate, and unfortunately, that's kind of what we're seeing in the market in general on so many things.
Yeah, that's probably pretty close these days to be able to have a bid that's reasonably close to engineer's estimate. A lot of times those estimates come from previous cost referencing. And with the cost escalating so dramatically, sometimes the estimates are kind of archaic. Okay, any other questions or comments? We got Councilman Tenney.
Yeah, real quick, Craig, I can see the benefit to employee comfort in terms of efficiency and other things like that. Is there also a safety component potentially to doing this work inside rather than outside?
Yes, definitely. There be some additional safety that would go with it. Definitely being outside in the elements brings in, slip, trips, falls capability, as well as just being in the elements can make it much harder. If you're out there and your hands are freezing, it makes it a lot harder to work on things like changing out hydraulic hoses and such.
Great. All right, any other comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll move to approve city contract number 2022-158.
Second.
A motion is second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item 10G. You're up. Or are you going to read
I thought
it?
Sarah was going to read it.
Yeah.
I am. Approval of city contract number 2022-153 with Cactus Asphalt, Inc. for the fiscal year 22 pavement preservation project.
You caught me off guard. So while it's going to be the last time you're going to see his face, you're going to see mine a little bit over the next couple months. As we move forward, we've got several projects coming out that are currently out for bid. This is our FY22 pavement preservation project. It's a segment of our overall pavement management program. Pavement preservation projects are typically surface treatments, roads that are not too far gone, and we can get some more lifespan out of them by doing surface treatments. This project will include areas in the Pinion Oaks area, Center Point East, Blooming Hills Drive, Cedarwood, Doka Drive, Mosher Lane, as well as Marina Street and North Alarcon near downtown, and also the city's sewer and water facilities. Currently, council approved the crack sealing project a few months ago. They're currently working on crack sealing these roads out in anticipation of this application. They'll also clean up the roads before they get started. They'll remove any areas of distressed pavement that just can't really handle the surface treatment. So if we have an area that's really alligator or something like that, we'll remove that, put some new pavement down, and then chip seal over the top of it. The roads in these areas are in fairly good condition. This will generally give us another 7-10 years more out of the life cycle. As a matter of fact, as good as our program is, the area out in Pinion Oaks called for those roads to be removed and replaced or milled and paved over the next couple of years. Through going out and actually looking at the streets, we realized they've got some more life left in them. We're going to take advantage of chip sealing these at this time, probably gain ourselves another 10 years. And a lot of these roads were developer-installed roadways. This is the first phase of Pinion Oaks, first phase of Center Point West, so these roads are coming up on 20 years already. So we advertised the project in January, received 2 bids on February 3rd. Public Works is recommending the award of the low bid to Cactus Asphalt for an amount of $899,534.56. The estimate for the project was $827,608. As Craig mentioned, it's the world we live in right now as far as our prices we're seeing and estimates. Staff has received written confirmation of the bid from Cactus Asphalt, verification of their license, bonding, references, and past performance of previous projects has been completed and deemed satisfactory. We will be using the city's standard construction contract for this project, and funding for this project is budgeted and available in FY22 in the Streets Fund. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Well, these are petroleum-based sealing products too, aren't they?
We've had a couple pre-bid meetings lately where we're hearing from the contracted community that the prices they're getting, they're getting a 24, 48-hour hold on that price.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes it very tough in the bidding environment.
Councilman Shishka.
Thank you, Mayor. I was informed this morning by my fellow radio host, Mayor Kel Palguda from Prescott Valley, that they're no longer using chip seal. They're using a slurry. Is that something that we're looking at, or is it reasonable? Or
one of the things we do here is we'll use a chip seal and then we put a PMM coat over the top of it, which is a polymer modified master seal. So that's when you see the chip seal goes down, then it looks we go back and spray it, it looks very black when it's done. That helps to seal it in. It's not the conventional chip that's more loose aggregate just exposed on the roadway. So we do a surface treatment over the top of the chip seal on these projects.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Pro Tem Rusing.
Thank you. How many lane miles are in this project?
See, you threw me a curveball.
Just, wondering how many lane
Mayor
miles.
Pro Tem Rusing, I did not jot that down as part of my notes.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay, all righty, thank you.
It's 8 locations, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay,
It is one of the better bangs for the buck we get on out of our paving program.
okay, thank you.
I can get that information for you if you'd like, though.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, Tim, we have a lot of new council members here. And of course, you and I have talked about the pavement preservation overall program for a number of years and how we're trying to get those numbers up to a more sustainable condition. So even though that's not on this particular topic, I think maybe having a presentation regarding what that whole plan is and how we're trying to be a little more coordinated in how we determine where those dollars are being spent might be valuable for the council to kind of be updated on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can give you a little bit of an update, just where we're at so far this fiscal year. With this project included, we have spent about $7.2 million of our budget this year, and we still have a couple more projects coming out before the end of the fiscal year.
Very good. Any public comment?
No, Mayor.
Any other concerns? I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2022-153.
Second.
A motion is second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, moving on to item 10H.
Approval of 2 items related to the Perimeter Security Updates Project to Prescott Regional Airport as follows. Number 1, approval of city contract number 2022-164 with Asphalt Paving and Supply. And number 2, approval of city contract number 2019-069A33, an amendment to city contract number 2019-069 with Dibble Engineering.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Christy Miller, Airport Services Manager. As Sarah mentioned, we're here today for approval of 2 contracts for our perimeter security project at the airport. I like to think that you guys saved the best for last on the agenda today. Now, we have previously been to you for acceptance of a grant from ADOT for this project. So this is the construction contracts to move forward with that project is the request we're seeking today. There's a twofold purpose to this project. The first one being that our current perimeter gates, access control, and fencing are starting to experience significant challenges and are getting very costly as many of the parts are starting to go out on those gate systems. So that's the first part of this project. But the second purpose of this project is to meet the requirements as mandated by 2 different agencies, the Federal Aviation Administration under our Part 139 to serve commercial service aircraft, as well as the Transportation Security Administration for meeting the needs to make sure that those that do enter the airfield are permitted to be there. So we did put this project out to bid in September of 2021, and we did only receive 1 bid at that time. It was significantly over the engineer's estimate, as our mayor pointed out, and as you've heard on other projects. It's in alignment with that. So what we did is we regrouped, since this project is being primarily supported by ADOT in state funding. We went back to ADOT and went over the bid with them and looked at options. They were unable to do a change order, so we looked at options for this project, and we did reduce and modify some of the scope on the project. They did ask us to put it out to bid a second time with a reduction in scope. So we did put it out again in November of 2021, and in this time we pulled out some of the scope from the base bid and added a second add-alt that in the event that funding was able to allow, we could authorize any of the add-alts on the project. Again, only 1 bid was received in November of 2021 on this project from Asphalt Paving and Supply. And despite the meaningful scope reduction, again, the base bid was even further out of alignment with the engineer's estimate. So what we did is we regrouped, we met with ADOT once again, and they did permit us to directly negotiate with Asphalt Paving Supply on this project. So we did meet with them in early December to look at any potential for reducing costs on this project so that we could get it to move forward. We did pull out a few different components from their original, or from their bid, from the base bid, specifically related to the biometrics, as well as some of the camera systems that, in conjunction with our IT department, we can work on procuring separately for this project. So we did pull those out, and with that, it does remain over our typical funding for an ADOT-funded project, which is typically funded 90% by the state level and 10% locally. But we have reviewed it, and in light of current conditions, we are recommending a staff going forward with this project with an additional $108,225 share in addition to our originally planned $175,000 share for this project. Again, the grant has already been received. It's in the bank ready to go, basically. So we are recommending that we move forward with this project. The contractor has advised that there is a 4 to 6 month lead time right now on the parts for the project. So with approval today, what we can do is we can get an administrative NTP so that the Asphalt Paving Supply, as well as their subcontractors, could go ahead and procure the items. And so we will start construction on this actually in after July 1. So we can include the additional city share in the FY23 capital budgeting process. So the additional share as well, we do have 2 COVID relief grants as well that we have received that will be factored into our capital budgeting process as you see it go forward in the coming months. And so that will help offset the additional city share as well for this project. And so with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Montoya.
I just want to extend a compliment to airport staff for working so diligently to encounter these budgeting challenges. I think everyone is experiencing rising costs, so it's certainly appreciated that you guys are having a concerned eye towards taxpayer dollars and trying to be diligent in making sure that we're leveraging grants where possible. And I've really been impressed with the efforts of the airport team, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly will second that comment. Being able to have major construction projects bid and awarded and locked in is a real challenge these days. I was even telling Councilman Shishka before when I used to tell my wife, well, you don't have to wait and fill up when you're at half. Get down to maybe a quarter of the tank and then we'll use our points at Fry's to fill up. Man, I'm telling you, you got to fill up when it hits maybe 3/4 now because it'll go up 20 cents a gallon by the following day. So that just makes all of those efforts to try to work and keep the budget reasonable here very laudable. So thank you very much for that. Any other comments or questions? Do we have any public comment?
No, Mayor.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll move to approve city contract 2022-164.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Mayor, I'll move to approve city contract 2019-069A33.
Second.
Motion is second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Okay, well, that concludes our meeting and our voting meeting and all of our issues today. So I'm sure you'll all be disappointed if I don't have a scintillating quote to bring this meeting to an end, but maybe that's just it. Fill up when your tank gets down less than a quarter.
I think even the founding fathers would agree with that advice right now, Mayor.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.